you could make things run. Well, as Celeste said, because there are a lot of new people. As Celeste said, I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor, Elizabeth, for quite a while, and I've been counseling people for a while. It's, especially women, couples, that kind of thing. And I could tell you, ladies, that divorce is not a nice thing. It's really not something that God ever intended to happen. And I mean, I could say that safely, that divorce is something that God never intended to be a part of anybody's life. When God's intention for marriage was actually for the two to become one. That's actually what the Bible says, that the two should become one flesh. And just hearing that, when you try to, if you were to try to tear your own flesh apart, right? Because the Bible is saying he sees a man and a woman who are married as, one. And when you try to tear that apart, it is going to be painful, right? It's almost impossible to go through a divorce or separation from someone that you've been involved with for a long time, or a breakup. Because co-parenting is not only for, divorce, people who are divorced or separate, but the other situations as well. But it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing for both parties to deal with, to find common ground, to remain friends. In fact, most people, when they break up, in a relationship, it's difficult to even be friends, far less to share a child together and have to communicate with this person for the rest of your life. And so, ladies, I know it's not easy. Divorce, separation, breakups, those things are not easy. Certainly never God's plan for you, which is why, ladies, God takes relationships and having sex outside of marriage, right? I know some of you had your children, of course you're married and now you're divorced and separate. But for the ladies who might have, hooked up with someone and, you may have become intimate with them and you all had a child together. And I mean, it was not necessarily your plan to live the rest of your days with this person, or you didn't see the person as a husband, but it happened. It's really something that you want to avoid in your life. And so it's a difficult thing, breaking up, and having children in a breakup makes it even more difficult. And so I can imagine and know that co-parenting has many challenges. And so I know it's not easy. So I'm not here, because I'm going to give you all some tips and stuff and, to handle conflicts and different things. And I don't want you all to think that, I'm going through this and thinking it's easier said than done. I know that it can be challenging. I've spoken to women who have, been dealing with ignorant child fathers, and don't know, how to navigate this whole parenting thing, right? Sharing with someone else. So I want you all to be free to make comments while I'm speaking. You could comment in the chat. At the end of the session, I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask questions. So you could unmute your mic and ask questions, or make comments, or share with us, because I'm sure there are a couple of women on this call who probably have been co-parenting for a long time and can actually give advice. So let me ask you all, before I actually get into it, let me ask you all a question, and you all could type your answer in the chat, right? Ladies, we cooler. I saw plenty new people. I want to tell you all, we cool. People share. This is a safe space. It's this group is designed to help women, to build them up, to lift them up. Nobody judging anybody. Hearing your feedback always helps me, and it helps the other women. So please feel free to express yourself in the chat while I'm doing the session. It's difficult to answer questions, so we take it at the end, right? But you could type your comments or questions in the chat while I'm speaking, and I'll get it. Let me ask you a question, and I want to ask you all to type it in the chat. What would you all say, those of you who are in a co-parenting situation right now, what is the most challenging thing for you? If you could put that in a couple words in a chat, tell me what is the most challenging thing that you face in communication. Wow, okay. Wow, okay. Wow. That is so interesting. That is so interesting. You see, okay, that's amazing. Everybody's saying communication. So I have never been in a co-parenting situation, right? And so I've never had to deal with these things directly. But in doing research, you know, for the past couple of days, that has actually been the number one thing that has been coming up: communication, and how important communication is between the parents, right? So this is interesting. Communication. I'm new to this. I would say communication as well. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Look at that. Right. So communication. Thank you, ladies, for your honesty and for sharing. Right. So let me get right into it. Right. So co-parenting, you all know what it is. You don't necessarily need a definition, but what it is really is the responsibility of two people who were once in a romantic relationship, whether married or just dating, or in some cases it could have been just a one-night stand. But the whole thing about co-parenting is that you live now in separate houses, right? You know, you don't live together. In some cases, you've never lived together. But let's say you were married and you are now divorced or separate. You are living in a separate house, but you have children and you have to parent these children in this separate environment. Let me ask another question. How many of you have your co-parenting because you were married and you're now divorced or separate? I'm not co-parenting the situation. My common law husband is, and it's definitely communication. Okay, so one person saying yes, she is divorced or separate. So you were married and you're either divorced or you're separate from the person. Once in an intimate relationship, now separate. Okay, Rachel is going through a divorce. Let's see, who else we have? Anybody else separate or divorced? Yes, I'm divorced. Let's see, I'm going through a divorce. Separate 10 months and counting. Every time I see your name, I laugh. This Makoya, the Makoya flag. Separate. Okay. Right. So thanks, ladies. Right. And for those of you going through the divorce now, I'm sorry that this is something you have to be going through. It's really not something that's pleasant. And I don't think I ever met a couple. I don't think anybody gets married with the intention of being divorced or separate one day. Nobody is walking down the aisle, at least I hope so. Nobody's walking down an aisle. That's why I put my name. Nobody's walking down the aisle and in their mind is like, you know what, in 5 years, I'm going to be divorced. In 5 years, I'm going to be separate. In 5 years, we're going to hate each other. Nobody. So everybody gets married with the intention of this is till death do us part. At least I hope that's what's supposed to be. And so going through a divorce and separation, I'm sure for you all, it's a difficult thing. And I really hope that with the help of God, you're able to navigate through it, right? And I'm going to try to give you all some help with the co-parenting part. Yeah, so listen, ladies, right? So you live in separate houses, we're married, now you have children, you have to do this thing together, right? And co-parenting could happen through divorce, separation, an unmarried couple. Could have been living together. Unfortunately, even one night stands. I mean, I have a small circle and I know people who got pregnant after a one night stand or just a very casual relationship with someone that was just mainly sexual, but certainly nothing of any core value, or had any intentions for the future. And the person got pregnant and now they have to have this man in their life for the rest of their life, even though that was never their intention, right? So those are the three main. There are other ways you end up in a co-parenting situation, but these are the three most common, right? Divorce, separation, an unmarried couple who is no longer dating, and somebody who could have found themselves in a one-night stand, right? And so there are three different styles, ladies, of co-parenting, whether you know it or not, or gave it a label or not, or whether you ever read it or not. There are three ways, perhaps more, three main ways If you are married, I did not see that question, right? But we'll answer the questions at the end, because I'm sure questions will pop up, but I can't stop to answer all of them, right? So there are three main ways, I'm sure there are others, that people can handle co-parenting, right? The first way is to be both parties are cooperating with each other. They're cordial to each other, and they're working together as parents for the best interest of the child, right? So that's one way, and that is the ideal way. So you're cordial, you and your whether it's your ex-husband or your ex-boyfriend or child father, because for some of you the reality is it's just a child father. They were actually nothing much to you, right? You actually get along. I mean, not friends or anything, but you're working together for the child's best interest. So that's one way and the best way. The other way is parallel co-parenting, which when you still do have the child's best interest at heart, but because you all perhaps maybe can't get along, or you end up in conflict when you try to, or just not, none of that. It could be this parallel co-parenting happens a lot in that phase where it's sort of early in the separation, and you have not adjusted yet to being no longer romantically involved with this person, and it's a bit toxic, right? And so you still have your child's best interest at heart, but you're doing it with the least communication possible. So I in my house, you in my house, I have my way, you have your way. Yes, we have our differences, but we still gonna try to make things, have a common ground for the child's best interest, right? But it's more, I'll give you an example of how it plays out in one scenario, the three different types. And the last one is conflict, right? Where you have a conflicting co-parenting style. And ladies, this might sound difficult for you to hear, but when I describe what these three look like, if you find yourself in this last category where it's conflict, right? Your child is not, their interest is not what is the primary thing in your co-parenting. It's not the child's best interest. People who have this type of co-parenting style where it's, a lot of conflict. It's ladies, don't get vexed with me. It's basically selfish. And you still can't get past you and your emotions and your feelings and your hurt to put your child first, right? So let me give you all an example of how each of these scenarios would work, right? And you could place yourself now in the a category. So the number one is you're both cooperating, you all communicate, and you're doing this for the child's best interest. Your daughter come home by you, your turn, 2 days, 3 days, whatever. And she busts through the door and she said, Mommy, I hate daddy boy. I can't take it when I go by daddy. He's do this and he don't let me do this and he don't let me do that. And daddy don't let me do this or whatever, right? As somebody who is thinking about the child, the first thing you might want to do is talk to the child and say something like, oh gosh, don't say that about your father now. You can't say I hate your father, right? You can't say I hate your father. So what is this going on? So you try first to find out, what is this rage about? What you're angry about? What does your father do now? Let me hear you, right? And the child would tell you, and you would be like, okay, you're gonna have to work that out. Something gonna have to happen. I'll talk to him and see what I could do, right? You will take it a step further now because you really are concerned about your child. Your child just come through the door and say they hate their father. And what you would do is communicate that to her father and say, listen, whether his name is John or whatever, John, Lisa now bust through the door and say she hates you because you don't let her go here, there, whatever. You give him the reasons, what going on. Did you all have a fight? How we could fix this, because I don't want her thinking like that. That's an example of somebody who is thinking about their child. because you know that, okay, now this is one example, but of course there are many other ways you could see the parents cooperating, right? You're thinking about your child, you know, because you don't want him or her to grow up with resentment for the other parent. You don't actually know what's going on, and you actually want to investigate and find out, because come on, if you have children long enough, you know that children could exaggerate and they could be emotional when they're not getting their way. So to just jump on the child bandwagon would be an error for even a parents who are living together, right? You need to get to the bottom of it, why the child is so emotional, and see how you could solve that. But you take it a step further as you know, because you cooperated and you want your child to, you want the best for your child, you would actually communicate with your ex and find out what's happening and see how you all could come to a solution. It might even go as far as, well, Gil, he will explain to you, and maybe you all might come together, talk to the child together, whatever. So that's how that looks, right? That's how that looks. Parallel now, same scenario, bust through the door, I hate daddy, so whatever. And so you might say, you go back to you start with the child again, you try to calm the child down, try to find out why you're saying that, what actually happened, right? But the difference is, you might say to the child, after you try to speak to the child and find out why you're feeling those types of emotions, what actually happened with daddy and so on. Again, you're not jumping on daddy bandwagon, right? You're not jumping on the child band, because that's easy to do at that point, eh? But you're not necessarily communicating so much with your ex. But in a situation like that, you would say, hey, I will talk to your father and see what's happening. But all you're really gonna do is probably mention it to him, say, listen, I'm just telling you out of courtesy. So and so came and home and say so and so happened, right? So you need to work that out with her. So it's not necessarily you and him trying to work anything out, right? You sort out your child, you talk to them, you try to get to the bottom of it, and you're at least making him aware, right? Or if in that scenario to the parallel co-parenting, things could be at a stage where you don't even want to communicate with him unnecessarily, although I see that as a reason to communicate. You could say to your child, once the child is mature enough, well, listen, when you go back by your father, you'll talk it out now. I don't want you saying those things about your father. Go, right? So you may not want to talk to him because you're not looking for no reason to have to call him, because all you have all your issues. But remember your child first. So you're putting that aside and you're encouraging the child to talk to their father when they go. If you realize maybe later on it's still not resolved, then maybe you might say, well, okay, let me muster up enough energy and strength to call this man and tell him, see what's really going on. But you still have it's your child you're considering, right? The last one, which is the style that has a lot of conflict, the same scenario, it would go like this. When the child walks through the door, mommy, I hate daddy. Daddy, don't let me go nowhere, thing whatever. You say, Gary, you see what I was going through? Yeah, you feel it's just so I leave your father, eh? I was going through. What do you think I divorced you for? Right? Yeah, your father not easy, girl. Your father not listen, I know what you're going through, but what you gonna do? Right? I know that man, girl. I know that man, right? And so instead of your initial thought or your initial reaction to that, or you're laughing or you're LOLing, because I know some are LOLing because it sounds so familiar, right? Like that style, those parents, they're only too happy for the child to say something negative about their parent. The parent actually happy. So in their eyes is like, they finally seeing my way. Yeah, they gain it. They gain what I get too, right? Instead of studying your child's emotional state and why they're making such a strong statement as I hate daddy, you happy to bash daddy. You want to make daddy look bad so that you could look good. You're in business with the child, right? Even though you might come after and say some words to the child and try to sort them out, your initial thought was how I could make you look bad and make me look good in this situation, right? And so you take the opportunity, and that is such a tempting thing, especially if the child is a little older. It's very tempting in that scenario to go down the road and bad talk daddy, right? With the child. And so it's both all you now. Yeah, you have a partner. Yeah, your father and this, and And that's not having your child's best interest at heart. So those are the 3 ways that you could handle co-parenting. So if you and your husband, or sorry, your ex-husband, or it could still be a husband because it could be separate, your ex-boyfriend, whatever, cannot get along at all, right? It is more toxic. You cannot get along at all, right? You do not want to have anything to do with him. It still does not mean that when you are dealing with your child, that you have to show that on animosity and that resentment that you have for your husband, so that your hate and resentment is so much, your hurt, that your initial thing is to bad talk, right? Oh, okay, sure, Leslie Ann. Celeste will put it in the comments, right? Celeste Leslie Ann is asking for the contact because she cannot stay on the call, right? Okay, so those are the 3 different ways that co-parenting can happen. And guys, the first one is the ideal one. Now listen, let me tell you something, right? Even married couples, ladies, living in the same house, or let's say living with your boyfriend or whatever, right? Which you shouldn't really be doing. Right. It is challenging for even married couples living in the same house sometimes to agree on a parenting style, to not have conflict, right? And so I could just imagine what it is like to try to do it separate, in 2 where your husband have one way and you have one way, and you're not even living together. You can't see what's going on when your child is there, right? So it's difficult married ladies, and it's difficult unmarried, or separate, living separately. So I know it is difficult, right? So what I want to do now is go through some points to help you all to navigate difficult decision making, how to find a common ground, how to find a place, no matter how toxic your relationship is with your ex, to find some kind of common ground, right? Some way to put, some way to put your, at the end, ladies, I want you all who are putting these questions and comments to remind me, and so we could talk about it, right? Because, these things are true, and I want to hear, if you are in such a scenario, how you handle certain things, right? So how to handle conflict, how to keep things as civil as it possibly can, how to put your child first, right? Because at the end of the day, ladies, if you agree with me, right? And I'd hope that all of you would agree with me. If you agree with me that it's really, at this point, you are not living together again, you are separate, the most important thing now is your child and their well-being. Ladies, you made your choice. You made your choice. You hook up with that man, right? You hook up with that man. Nobody forced you, nobody hold a gun to your head. The relationship did not work, right? Things became toxic. Life was not what you intended it to be. It didn't turn out the way you planned. That does not mean, so the divorce and separation destroys children. It don't matter how amicable, y'all are after. Y'all could be best friends after. Once you're divorced and that child no longer sees themselves in the security of a home with a mommy and daddy who love them, that child is going to be affected. It is, ladies, it is almost impossible for a child to, especially a young child, to see their parents divorce and not be affected in some way. And so I think it should be the foremost on your mind now that you are no longer in a relationship with this man. And for some of you, you know that there's no hope for the future. I know sometimes when you separate, you still have hope for the future, right? You still have hope. But in some cases, this is it. In fact, you remarry and he remarry, and you all actually have separate families now. So it's a blended situation, blended family situation, right? The most important thing is not getting at your husband, getting back your husband, all of these things. It's now to focus on that child and avoiding them the least damage, trauma that they could possibly go through because of your separation and divorce, right? And so I'm helping you with some things that you may have thought about or not thought about. Some of you all have agreements made by the court, certain days and times that you have your child, certain things that you can and cannot do, certain things that you are responsible for. In most cases, the woman is the primary caregiver, the one that has most custody of the child. It's very rare that the father would be the one to get, more custody. I think a female woman would have to be in a really bad position for a judge to not allow her to keep the children or to have that primary care, right? And so, right, so I'm starting to help you all with the difficult parts, right? You all said communication is number one. Number one here on my list is also communication, right? Maintain, ladies. Now, I know things toxic. I know it's difficult. I know for some of you, you don't get along, right? But you're trying to not see yourself, right? You're trying to look at your child here. So maintain open and regular communication. Establish a clear, open line of communication with your co-parent, right? Regularly discuss important matters regarding your child's upbringing. You don't have to go into the little things, right? This is important. So things like education and healthcare, perhaps for some religion, extracurricular activities, important things, right? If your relationship with your child's father is so toxic that, and I know some cases it's like that, just to have a normal conversation without it getting into a row, you have to find different ways to communicate. Try maybe not face-to-face at first, right? Try emails, right? I know a couple who separated and things were so bad that they decided not even to try to communicate. So they would communicate via email or text. I mean, it could still get nasty. It could type some nasty things in a text or email, but it avoids the bawling and shouting and cussing out, or they could cuss somebody writing it, right? There's also something that I discovered, there co-parenting apps where you could have very little interaction, that everything is done through apps. But ladies, let me tell you something, right? This is what I believe, right? So communication is very, very important. If you don't communicate with your child's father, you will not have the information that you first of all, you're not going to know what is going on in that household, right? Things could go missing, communication could get skewed there in between, and times could go wrong. Who was to pick up when? Because if it's all about toxic and you're gonna make an arrangement for a time and you miss the time he's supposed to come, or vice versa, and who's supposed to pick up, because everything is such a big row. There are no clearly defined rules and time. So everything just in a whole toxic. And listen, that is the worst thing you could do for your child. And so, ladies, you are going to have to humble yourselves and put aside your grievances and the hurts that you feel towards this man, and try to find a way to communicate. If every time all you talk is a cuss out, and this, for me, this should only be in the earlys. I can't imagine people separate or divorce after, let's say, 3-4 years. 3-4 years, and you're still in that stage where you can't have a normal conversation, especially if the both parties moved on. Like you have another significant other, and so does he. It's supposed to become a little easier now, because you're not looking to form an emotional attachment with this man again. You're not, and yes, you still remember certain things, but you're not necessarily feeling that hurt, right? But I do know that in the case where the man pick up another woman, some of us women, maybe none on this call, get a little vindictive, and you want to show up the woman, you want to show him up to her. and you want to find out wherever dirt you could find out on her to prove to him that he's not with a good woman, and I don't want that woman raising my child, right? Even though you don't know nothing about the woman, right? But ladies, once you are separate and you've gone your separate ways, you all have made an agreement to divorce or separate or whatever, you cannot control who your child's father gets into a relationship with, right? All these are consequences of a breakup, a divorce, a separation. You lose control over certain aspects of your child's life and upbringing. It is something, ladies, that you are just going to have to accept. Now, this is in the case where the father actually does want the child in their life. There's some fathers who don't care. And I'm being honest, there's some situations where I've seen that, and it's actually the best thing for the child because the father's so worthless and irresponsible that having the child in the father's care could actually be detrimental to their safety because the father's irresponsible. He would take the child to places that's unsafe. He might be somebody who drinks and will drive, you know, and a case like that, that's why you have to go to court and get certain things in order, right? So your child's life is not in danger being with this man alone for 3 days, right? And so, I mean, if that's the case, you have to put things in place. You'd have to go to court and make sure that perhaps you have full custody. And if the father is seeing the child, you have to be there, there's supervision and so on, right? But not alone, right? So communication is important. Find ways to do it. But you have to do it, ladies. You have to put aside your pride and be able to have effective communication, right? And going into that now, it might sound to you all now, even if you're getting along the best, this is something you should do. You have to have a plan as parents, a parenting plan. You have to develop a comprehensive parenting plan or an agreement, and make sure and include the important aspects of a child's life. You need to cover things like the child's schedule, responsibilities, things like their health. All of these things, you need to have a plan. You can't just leave it up to, if your child is on some type of medication, all of these things, you have to make sure that you all sit down like two responsible adults, right? And have a plan. Okay, so Mary normally does football on a Saturday. I live in, well, unless the court says otherwise, right? If this is agreement you all are coming up with, I live in Digo and the football field is a half hour away the football field is 5 minutes away. So Saturday she come by me so I could take her to football, bring her back, right? And these are things that you sit and agree. You don't just let life happen, right? Even as parents living in a home with each child, you don't just let life happen. You should have a plan. It's important for children to have structure. When parents divorce and separate and the child go in between homes, that it destroys the one security that they felt living in a home with mommy and daddy. Or for some, they may have never lived together with their parents, but for the ones who once did, and then they end up between homes, moving in between, it really disrupts that structure that they once had, and they had a schedule, right? And so it may take a time for it to happen, ladies, but you need to get that child back into structure. So even though it's 3 days here, how much days did I have in a week? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 3. Sorry, right? So even though it's 4 days here and 2 days there, or however you split it up, after a while that becomes a routine. So I know someone who they would have their child from I think Wednesday to Sunday, and the father would have the child the other days, right? And it becomes, and once that is running smoothly, whatever activities daddy would take them to, we know that's happening, and the child will grow accustomed to that and eventually settle into that type of structure. But you should ensure that there is structure in your child's life, right? Remember, we put in the child first, right? In this comes up even religious upbringing. This is some important thing, something that you have to discuss and include in your plan. There's some families that, couples that separate, and they might be of different religions, religious beliefs, and you might be of this strong belief because of your religion that your child, you don't want your child playing kiddies carnival, let's say, right? You don't want your child playing kiddies carnival. You don't believe that carnival is of God, and you don't want your child to play kiddies carnival. But daddy has a different opinion. The child's father has a different opinion. And he wants, he into the mass or whatever, and he wants the child to play mass, and he do business with your religious beliefs or whatever. Things like that, ladies, you cannot, if you have a strong belief, if it's something that you really don't want your child involved in, you are going to have a discussion with your child's father. In this case, again, I don't know if I don't think the court gonna, because listen, the reality is, ladies, that's the child's father. Once he's not putting the child's life in danger, when your child goes to stay with their father, right? That child is subject to whatever rules and authority and so on, and whatever happens in that household, your child is going to be subjected to that, right? I want to say something here. Hope it doesn't sound out of timing. With all of this being said, if there's anybody on the call who is not married yet, or you're not in a serious relationship and you don't have children, ladies, I want to encourage you all to please consider your choice of partner. Please do not rush in because of feelings and chemistry, or because you and the guy just get along good. He just make me laugh. The amount of women when I ask, so what you like? I never forget years ago I asked somebody, I was supposed to, I was like, so what, she told me she had a boyfriend, and I realized they were getting serious. And I was intrigued by her choice, I'll be honest. I didn't say that, but I just asked her, I said, so what do you like about me most? Like, what is the thing that, because I realized they were going on the road to. And she said, gosh, she's making me laugh. And I said, well, that's the number one thing. That I was like, that can't be the number. That's like the first thing that comes to you. And she said, well, yeah, what I think super, oh gosh, girl. And I would tell her, I'd just be laughing right through. And I'm like, okay, that, ladies, listen, if you're in a position where you have not chosen a partner yet, or you're not in a relationship, if you do get in a relationship and you're considering marriage, listen, you see what's happening, what we're talking about here tonight. Even if you are married, right? We're talking about parents who are apart, right? Even as a married person, you could realize that you and your husband have grave differences. If your reasons for hooking up with that man were not because your core values aligned, or because you realize this person had great integrity, and that, if it was not that, you could get some shocks in your marriage when you realize, wait, no, I didn't know this man was thinking, so I didn't know he liked this, right? So ladies, you gotta go deep. You can't be surface in your choice, because when it comes to children and even bigger decisions in life, you'd realize how your choice of partner could greatly affect your life, right? Just wanted to stick that in there. So even when it comes to religion, you have to have a plan. You cannot leave things just, if you feel strongly about your belief as a woman, and that you want your child brought up a certain way with certain values and religious beliefs and spiritual, you cannot leave it up for grabs. You can't just say, well, yeah, but when he buy me, so what happened? You could come to an agreement. Say, listen, I don't want Johnny to be too confused, so let's decide on, right? If your husband is strong about his beliefs and you are too, he might say, well, I want the child go to the temple with me when he buy me. You actually cannot do anything about that, right? Sorry about that, right? That's just how it is. But you still have to come up with a plan, and you should know that this is happening, right? It is what it is, ladies. It's not the ideal thing. As I said, God is certainly not God's plan, but that's the child's father, right? Number 3, focus on the child's best interest. Well, I've been saying that from the beginning. Always prioritize your child's well-being and their best interest when making decisions. It is not about you, ladies. Please, it's not about you. Put aside personal differences or conflicts with your child's father, and base your choices on what will benefit your child's physical and emotional development and spiritual. So the decisions that you're making, there are some things that you can let slide. Listen, I knew a woman who, her big thing was she didn't let her son eat certain things, right? She was very, very picky with what he would eat. And when he went by his father was much more relaxed. Nothing bad, just the normal things. Okay, she didn't let her child eat like almost no candy, right? Dear Rhonda. She almost did not let like nearly zero candy. And yeah, we know too much candy is not good for the child or whatever. But the father, when he would go by the father would give him candy. So of course, as a child, not excessive, right? Because I knew both. As a child, you actually looking forward to go by daddy because you know you're gonna be able to eat what you can't eat by mommy. That's just how it's going to be. But you cannot, ladies, in my opinion, again, if what the child's father is doing is not putting his life safety in immediate danger, he's not giving him a Coke every hour to drink, Coca-Cola, or not giving him licorice every second. You know, if it's just a matter of the choice of snacks, right? You cannot control that, Rhonda. You can't control it. The choice of snacks in your household might be X, and the choice of snacks in his household is Y. You can ask out of courtesy, you can say, listen, when he's by me, I don't allow him to eat XYZ. Can you please stick to that, right? It's for his best interest, right? He may be reasonable. He may be a reasonable man and say, okay, he might have that. You all might have that in common. Yes, but that is so subjective, Rhonda, that you cannot make it a big thing, right? I grew up drinking Coke and eating candy. Most of my generation, I'm 50, my generation, they know not about health. Parents, they know not about no health, no, right? You're drinking soft drink, you're eating ice cream every weekend, yeah, right? It wasn't because my parents didn't love me and they was trying to kill me. They was ignorant. Yeah, just ignorant. It's just their way, right? But now the world, everybody's much more health conscious, right? Even children. My child corrects me many times with my choice of food, even as a 6, 7-year-old, and I wish I could be more like my parents was, because the thing she's been trying to instruct me about, mommy, that's not a healthy choice. I'm like, really? When you start to work and make money, you buy your healthy choices. But anyway, right? So if it's a matter of a difference of snacks, Rhonda, if he's overdoing it, and again, like the things that he's giving your child to eat is making the child sick, that's a different story. But if it's just a matter of the things in my cupboard are a little different to your cupboard when you're at home, you know, unfortunately, that is something you're just going to have to accept. There are bigger things at risk, right? We'll talk more at the end, Rhonda, right? So the priority, when you are making this list, when you are making the number 2, the parenting plan, your priority should be the child's physical, emotional, spiritual, their development. Those should be the major things you agree on. Ladies, you will have unrealistic expectations if you think that you all are going to agree on everything and that everything you ask him to do when the child is by him that he will do. That is unrealistic. You're going to have to let go. When that child leaves your hands and go into his car, you lose control. Somebody told me, this is something I hear commonly, that, okay, the mother, when they have the child, they play a certain type of music that the child will, they don't like a certain type of music, right? But when they go by the fathers play a different type of music and real kind of. So basically, when the child come home, he singing some strange lyrics and whining, right? And that she don't play that kind of music in her house. And it's because daddy playing that music. What you gonna tell the man? He can't play music in his own home, his choice of music, right? So yeah, it is sad, it is heartbreaking. And I know as parents, you thinking, well, I don't want my child in that environment. That's the child's father, right? And so things like that, as difficult as it may be, what you're going to have to do as your child begins to grow, when your child is a toddler and, get at that stage, you're not going to understand a lot of that. All for them is simple. When I buy mommy, we listen to nice, slow music. And when I buy daddy, I just get to whine and listen to soca or whatever, right? As the child gets older, though, you can explain life to the child. You can start to say things, not to make daddy look bad, right? Remember, we're not trying to do that, right? The child will eventually grow and have understanding and be able to decipher things for themselves. Trust me, children pick up, right? So you don't need to try to make them dislike their father or see their father in a bad light, right? And so, but as your child grows, though, you could teach them the values that you want them to learn. Even ladies, even in a home with parents who love each other, there's sometimes differences. There's a time when a child reaches an age too where they make choices for themselves. You could bring up your child good in church. And when they hit 19, 20, you realize they're going in another direction. So even if they by you and there's a different spirit in your home than there's in daddy home, it's going to come down to a choice one day that your child has to make a choice. So what I'm saying is, you teach your child what you know is right, and the things that you think will benefit them in their life, that would help them to be a better person spiritually, mentally, education, whatever. As the child grows, they develop their own mindset. They start to reason with all the information that they get. They start and they're gonna become their own person and make their own choices. And so you have to trust that your child will grow, in character, and doesn't necessarily have to turn, if daddy bad, or I don't want to say bad, but if daddy have bad habits, trust that the child is not going to grow up like daddy, that the child would see a better way of living by you and make better choices. But you can't control your child either. Newsflash, you can't even control your child. You can't control your man and you can't control your child. Those of you who have teenage children, I'm sure you can attest to that. Like when they were 7 and 8, you're like, okay, my little, even them just try to rebel. But when they start to get to teenagers and start to make their own choices and voice their opinions, you realize, okay, this child have a mind of their own, right? So even those things, you don't have to fight those things so much, right? The child is going to eventually learn what is right and make choices, right? Whether they're going to choose right or wrong, or you can't control that, right? It is better if they're not influenced by like a dark environment. It's better if they're never exposed to it, but it may not be possible for you to control that in this scenario, right? So number 3 is the child's best interest. That's what we prioritize in the child when we're making the parenting plan, right? Well, number 4 falls right into what I'm saying. Seek consensus and compromise. Strive to reach agreement. Try to reach a middle point by engaging in open discussions, considering what the other party is saying. Look at their perspective. Try to understand things from their point of view, right? And you have to be willing to compromise and find a middle ground in certain situations. There's some things that you would fight for. I just give an example of me, something that I would fight for, right? Like really fight. If I know that my, let's say I know that my child's father, when they go there, let's say he's looking at pornography, or let's say he have people over, he promiscuous and is a woman every weekend, and the child exposed to certain things that could affect them, and sexually, they could get corrupt, because listen, when children exposed to certain things like that, it could really change their life from small. So let's say the child father watching pornography right in front of them, things like that, I would fight for. When I say fight, I mean I'm not giving in. I'm not gonna just sit back and say, well, it is what it is. These snacks, I go rest that, right? The music, I go rest that too. But certain things that I know could affect the child even long term in their life, I'm not gonna. Let's say you're child's father smokes or takes some sort of drug, cocaine, and they're exposed to the drug there. Things like that, I go in by judge and I fight and I say, no, I want full custody of my child. I don't want my child in that environment without supervision, right? The next thing, ladies, once the father wants to be a part of the child's life, you should not try to prevent it. What you should try to do is make sure that there's supervised visitations. If the man is such a bad state that the child can't be with them alone and a judge says, okay, yeah, I agree. But if the father wants to see the child and wants to be a part of the child's life, once again, he's not putting you and the child in danger, you should try to make that happen, even if it's by supervised visitations, or where you all go somewhere public and he could see his child and talk to his child for an hour or whatever. But don't be wicked, ladies, watch me. Don't be wicked and try to keep the child away from the father, even though you know the father wants to be, that it's hurting him, that he can't be in his child's life. Like he's hurt, he's crying, he loves his child. He know he imperfect, he know he bad, but you want to see child and you holding the child as a trump card. Let me tell you something, ladies. One day, when the child grows up and has their own understanding, they might just end up resenting you for keeping them away from their father. So when they're small, they don't have understanding, and all they know is they love mommy and mommy thing, whatever. When they start to get older and they start to realize, wait now, is my mother keep me away from my father? You mean I could have known my father? I could have talked to my father. They could just very well, the tables could turn and they end up resenting you. So that's not something you do. A child is not a trump card to destroy your ex, right? Don't do that, ladies, right? That is going to have consequences, and a child is going to be the biggest victim at the end of the day, right? So you have to come to a compromise. You have to have respect as well, right? You have to have respect. I'm going to come back to your comments and questions, right, ladies? So you have to find common ground, right? Number 5, involve professionals. Well, I've also been saying this if needed. If there's conflict, difficulty in decision making, things that you consider dangerous, you could have a mediator, a therapist, a family counselor, or take it to the court, whatever it is. But if things really become difficult, you're going to have professional help, right? A mediator, some kind of in between. For the child's sake, you're going to have to do this. It could be a grandparent. It could be a grandparent who have on a neutral ground, right? It could be a grandparent who love the child and they okay, they get along okay with the father, and and that grandparent could be the in between when things really bad. But involve professionals, get help, get somebody who's neutral about it and who could talk sense into him and to you, and could perhaps be the person, like let's say you don't even think so bad, you don't want to be in the presence of that person, your child's father. Let the grandparent take them, or the aunt or the sister, whoever is that person that is getting along with both parties, right? Number 6, follow legal agreements or court orders. If you have formal custody or co-parenting agreement, ensure that you adhere to the terms of that agreement and conditions, right? You don't want to start to do things outside of that. So if there is an agreement, stick to it. And many times if you stick to the agreement, it helps in the structure. Again, I know people who've been doing the co-parenting thing and they've stuck to whatever the judge has ordered for years, and it's been working. They're not trying to go outside of it. Or sometimes if they agree to do it, but don't try to do it underhand. If they agree, if you say, okay, I'm supposed to take him up on Thursday, this is why communication is so important. I'm supposed to come pick him up on Thursday, but I have a busy work week and I have this and that to do. Can you keep him until Friday for me, right? And if he says, sure, no problem, fine, right? But you communicate that, you explain yourself. You don't ask that question in an ignorant way, right? You don't do enough. Keep him for next day now. I'm busy, right? It's your child. You just explain yourself, ladies. Communicate properly, and see if he will go the extra mile with you, and vice versa, right? But you should stick to whatever legal agreement, the court orders, right? This is for when things real bad, or even not, right? This might be important in the future. This is also important when there's another woman involved, or in your case, another man, who could be maybe vindictive and or trying to sabotage the relationship, trying to maybe somehow make you suffer by trying to get the child to be with the father full time, whatever. But you know, there's some kind of toxic thing. It's important to keep documents, keep documentation, maintain. Sorry, I need water. I'll have to get Christy to get water for me. Maintain clear records of important decisions and agreements made. I don't know how anybody could live this way, but sometimes it's necessary. Document everything via text. So I'm dropping him at 10. I dropped him at 10, right? Pick him up. I gave him this amount of money. I gave him $100. He used to do X, Y, Z with it, right? Because you could give him $100, your father take it, and then he say, well, $100. He never had no $100, right? So document things, send it via email. If you can't just tell the person, remember, you know, you have the different types. If it's so bad that you don't want to even talk to him, send it in an email, but make sure you have it documented, especially if there's courts involved and so on. And let's say you are trying to build a case for just reason, ladies, not to be vindictive, to have full custody, and you don't right now, but you want full custody because you really think your child's best interest is not being sought, right? When he or she's with he or she father, right? Document when things go wrong. If he, you know, if you can't reach him and you call however much times. I mean, I know that is to me no way to live, but sometimes things get so bad that it comes down to that. So you can have written communication, document things via email, text, whatever, but you make sure and keep records so that you know that nobody could question, you know, that you were doing the right thing. And then the next thing is, if the child, wait, I wanted to talk about something concerning that. Keeping records, 1 second. Right, okay, no, it's just like, you know, things like, okay, if let's say one of you was supposed to be reimbursed, you know, you don't want to come up a month after and say you were supposed to give me back $200 because I bought so and so for him that you told me you was gonna buy and you tell me you'll give me back. If you have no proof of that, and he's a loafer and no good, he gonna try to get out of that. Right? So things like that you want to document. You want to show him that it's documented too. It's okay, so the $200, look, I have it here, writing it down, send you an email, look, I have it here. Right? So just things that, again, I really wish it didn't have to be like that, but sometimes it does. You know, things are so toxic and it does require that, right? But there's a higher way to live. There's a better way to live. It's called love and humility, ladies. And many times I think certain conflicts and disagreements can be avoided with humility and just love and putting your child first, right? If your child is at the age where they themselves can communicate and understand, and this would be for some as young as 6, 5, 6, 7, 8, talk to them. Find out how they feel. Ask questions. Ask them what they want. They may not be able to always get what they want because we know children can be unreasonable, right? But ask questions. Find out what's been going on. What goes on by daddy? How do you feel? Does anything make you uncomfortable? Does daddy do that? And nothing is wrong, but make sure you're not coming across to the child that you're trying to undermine daddy, but like you're just interested in their week. Listen, when your child come home from by daddy, excuse me, ladies, when your child come home from by daddy, you should sit with them and make it an exciting time. So tell me everything. Instead of as they walk through the door, what less man do? How much more money he had over? We get it. You're hungry, oh God, look how skinny you're looking. Your hair ain't combed properly. Look how that man does have you looking now. You looking like you in bed for 3 days. Oh my gosh, come, let me feed you. That man go kill you, you know. listen, if I just echoed any one of you ladies, you're wrong for that. Watch, man. You're wrong for that. Okay? Even if when your child walks through the door, when he come back from by daddy or she come back from by daddy, they looking a mess. Leave it in here. Just say in your mind, oh God, this man ridiculous. Because you know what's the thing? Ladies, you know what is getting vexed with us ladies, yeah? When all they was together, let me say he was responsible for taking care of the child one day, dressing them and making sure they get dressed for whatever party, because you're not there. He would dress them and take care of them the same sloppy way when all this together, but you ain't care because you are the man. So you ain't care. You might say it, yes, but it's not a big deal. You might say, oh God, I saw you call me child. You ain't call me child. You're good. Ha, ha, ha. You can't call me child. It's funny, right? Or they living together all the time, he's smoking weed, right? And the child know the smell of weed. Everybody go, the child know the smell of weed because daddy in your room smelling, smoking weed. But all of a sudden, it's a big deal when they separate. Oh, he's smoking weed. With my child there, he used to do it when all they was together too, right? So all of a sudden, certain things that was nothing to you, when you separate, now you're trying to make it a big deal because your motive's wrong. It's not your child you're thinking about. You're thinking about man and how you vex and you're resentful and you want to get back to him. So as the child walks through the door, you're telling them everything you notice that bad about them and what. Well, you're wrong for that. I'm saying it again. Instead, when the child walks through the door, even though you may observe all those things, right? You sit and say, so tell me how it went. So what you all did, what you ate, what daddy, where he took you all, who was home. You had to be smart about it too. Now, this is depending on the age. If it's a big child, you can communicate in this way. But if your child is like, 7, 8, even 9. So what, who came over? What all they watch on TV? What movies? Serious? And you don't even have to, even if you are alarmed by some of it, unless it's something really bad, you don't even have to let them know. Just be like, because you want them to talk. If when they start to share with you what happened by daddy, you start to, oh God, man, you see, I go, right? Oh God, when the child come home, they go start to lie and say nothing. Daddy didn't do nothing. We didn't go nowhere, mommy. Because hear what? Your child don't want to hear your rah either. Just how your husband or ex or whoever didn't want to hear it, your child don't want that either. So if the child come home and every time the child come home, the child realizes a bacana, when I tell when mommy asking me what going on, when I tell mommy what going on, right? The child is eventually going to start to, with maybe not lie, but withhold information from you. So ladies, be smart. If you really want to know what is happening in that home, and as your child you care about, you will just humble yourself and listen. Say, so yes, make it a nice time. Tell me everything. And then all they do, what? Oh, daddy let you do that? Oh my. And listen. And then it could go in his tail. All right? But you don't have to let the child know and go off on a tantrum. Right? The child will eventually close up and not share with you. So communicating with your child is also very important. It would give you more insight. You don't realize how closed up your children become when you communicate with them a certain way. When you come across with this toxic tone and daddy this and daddy like how you looking at, right? Ease me up, ladies, right? Have a little more wisdom. Remember, it's the child's best interest that we seek in here. So you're going to have that environment when the child come home that excited to tell you what's going on. In fact, you wouldn't even have to ask your boss, you do, well, mommy, we do so, and you just, wow, right? It's actually supposed to be like that, even if you're married in a home, you live in your children, let your children speak to you. If when your children come and try to talk to you, you explode, what do you think gonna happen, ladies? They're gonna start keeping things from you. So even if you had to bite your lip, they're telling you something that just say, oh gosh, really? That's what happened. Because you don't want to cut that line of communication. And after they tell you and stuff, then you talk to them. You share wisdom with them. You tell them, well, that might not be a good idea where you do there, no. But if you blow up and make a whole scene, you're cutting that child don't want to communicate with you again because they're frightened. They're afraid your response, right? Right. So what is the time? I have no, all right, okay. Next one, be consistent with rules and disciplinary measures. That may also be something that is different in both households. You may be a go in the corner and face the wall type of person, and daddy might be a get a belt and beat your person. If you could come to an agreement about how the child is disciplined, I think that's going to be very important. If the ideal thing would be for both of you to have the same method of discipline, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case again. So it's something that definitely should be part of your parenting plan and discussed. Okay, I don't beat Johnny. I don't beat my child. Oh, I might hit them with my hand, but I don't beat them with a belt. And you could tell them, well, I prefer that you don't beat my child with any object, right? Don't. And again, maybe if your child's father if the beating could be, to the point where you think it's too much, could be bordering on abuse, this is something you might have to take to the court and say, listen, I don't, that's something I think maybe worth fighting for, the degree of the way that he might discipline the child. But it's important, I think, to have structure and to be consistent with that, right? The better thing though, ladies, is to have a common disciplinary strategy, right? It should be common. That is the better thing, but that doesn't always work. And sometimes this is something that is hard to agree, but I think yours should come to this is something you should find a middle ground on, right? Because remember, you all were once together and you all once did do it together. And if both parties are rational and trying to seek the child's best interest, this is something that, you should be able to work on. You have to respect boundaries. Understand and acknowledge that both parents have their own lives, have their own responsibilities outside of parenting. Avoid prying into your ex business and into their affairs, making too much judgment about their life and who they choose. I mentioned this before. You have to have mutual respect, and you have to have respect for your child's father's boundaries. If there are boundaries set, if there are things that he's saying, I don't want you in this aspect of my life. I don't want you questioning things when it comes to my girlfriend or new wife or whatever boundaries. You have to respect that, right? Not the ones that, again, we always have the child as the focus, right? But sometimes you could, again, be vindictive and wanting to show the other person up as bad. You might overstep certain boundaries, right? But you wouldn't want anybody to do that to you. If you have certain boundaries, you'd want them to be respected. You should do the same for your child's father, right? 1 second. I think that is almost the end. I don't want to go too long because I want you all to ask questions. I want you to be able to also share your experiences, because in a lot of these sessions, I could share experiences. I cannot in this case. I can't share an experience or say, well, this happened to me. I just want to make sure I covered everything. Yeah, your husband's parenting style, sorry, your ex's parenting style, your child's father, does not have to be the same as yours. Once again, it's not putting the child in any danger. They can have a whole different style of parenting. You're going to have to accept that. Your children, just things I want to mention, your children, they can be more flexible than you might think and adapt, especially if they will adapt faster and better if they are feeling loved. Even though they know that this is not an ideal situation, if they are not feeling like they're in a constant war zone, but they are receiving love from you and from their father, it's going to make a big difference in their lives. If what they see is a constant toxic environment, ladies, that is going to affect how your child's behavior in every aspect of their life, perhaps even in the education, how they learn, how they retain, how they relate to people. They might start becoming more angry. You will notice changes in them. But if they're in a loving environment in both places, and they at least see mommy and daddy trying to not be friends, but at least you're not bawling out at each other and cussing each other, and the child not hearing you bad talking them. It's very important. But your child could be more flexible than you think, and they can adapt as well, right? Given time and consistency, your children will adapt to this new situation going between homes, right? Yeah, so I think that is it for now. But I do want to get to your, hold on, is it? No, flexible, respect boundaries. Yeah, right? So ladies, I want you to ask questions. I saw people asking questions, couldn't answer. I want you to, those of you in this situation, talk to me. Tell me how you cope. Tell me what based on what I said, what is a challenge for you, why things are perhaps how they are. And maybe you could share how things work with you. If it is working good, you could give us some insight as to how you all came to common ground and that kind of thing. But this is your time to unmute your mic, right? I see somebody's hand up already. Unmute your mic and you can go ahead and share. And sorry, just now red flag. Celeste, just while she's speaking, just go through the comments and see the things that I missed, right? And if I could address them. Yes, go ahead, my dear.
Good night to everyone. Thank you very much. This topic really fall in my garden, as it were. I would have hinted, it's like 10 months and counting that my husband and I have been separated. We have 4 children in the mix. We are before the courts. And when court is involved, it could be very, very, very nasty.
Yeah.
The youngest being a 5-year-old female, the 3 others being age 15, 13, and 12 going on 13. And I would share my personal in that the biasness that I would have, mentioned about the pervertedness of the court, and when people are heavy-handed and who they could reach because of their clout in life, he managed to get full custody of all 4 children. So I'm painted and demonized by society as a evil woman. We have different parenting styles. We have 2 different religious backgrounds. Very vindictive. And for me to end up a female magistrate giving a 5-year-old female to a father, and the initial experience that I would have brought to the attention of Children's Authority was that the boys were beating and cursing me in the presence of their father, and he was not intervening physically or verbally, and to end up being the demonized one. I'm also unemployed. There's a lot I'm dealing with. So I'm just sharing my scenario. I mean, it's an ugly thing to deal with, and the only comfort I have, I know that Satan, the devil, is behind it. And if you're not spiritually grounded, they will get really rolled over. So I encourage all that are in this forum tonight to take courage and to always try to see the gray clouds, see the silver lining in them.
I think you're breaking up. I don't know if something is up with your Wi-Fi, but we're not hearing you again. Okay. So maybe something is up with her Wi-Fi. So maybe in the meantime, she may come back to us, but in the meantime, anybody else wants to share. I did have a question for her. If you're hearing me, you could probably come back. And I mean, your husband has full custody of the children, but what is it like? You said a lot fell in your garden. What is it like? What is how do you navigate? How do you see your kids? What is it like when you do, you know, how does that work? What is the communication like with him, or is there any communication? You know, I'd like to know those things. Anybody else would like to share or ask a question, get something clarified? Anything you saw, Celeste, in the comments?
So somebody said, what about if you're married and in a co-parenting situation? And then somebody also said, what is a step-parent rule in co-parenting? So it's two different questions, but yeah.
The step-parent is now your child. It's that child, when that child is home with daddy, if that child's father is married, that woman now becomes a stepmommy, and a stepmommy takes on all the responsibilities of a mother. When in the home of the child's father and that mother, he has to be subject to his stepmother and her rules and her ways, and it's a stepmother. So when your child, okay, so you cannot, the person who asked that question, you cannot tell your husband, I don't want your wife doing so. So that's your husband's wife. And when your child is in that home, that child is under their authority. He is now one with this woman who is your child's stepmother. And so her role when that child is there is to be the child's mother at home there. You know, when I say mother, you know what I mean? Obviously, the child have a mother, they don't necessarily need another. But in terms of her rules, what she gives your child to eat, where they go, excuse me, even discipline, because the child is in a home, in their home now. So even discipline, all those things she's going to have to. So now it's now even broadened. So this is where it becomes blended and so on. So now the agreements that you make with your husband is no longer, ex-husband, sorry, it's no longer between you and him alone, it's between you, him, and her. So she's going to have to jump in the mix now, and you all need to agree as three now what is best for that child. And you know, if you, again, as a mother, if you see that woman does not have his wife does not have your child's best interests at heart, then you're going to have to fight for certain things, you know, to protect your child, you know. But that's tough. That's a tough situation, because when it comes down to it, that is his wife, and she will have a certain amount of authority over your child. And you have to respect that, right? Once she's operating within reason. What's the other question, Celeste?
So one was about co-parenting while you're married. So you're married to somebody, but you're co-parenting with somebody else. They didn't ask anything specific.
Well, so that's basically the opposite to what this person asked about the step. So you are the step. No. Yeah. So that person is a step. No. Yeah, it's the same as the step. So your child has a step parent then, a step mother, basically.
Well, they have a new husband.
Oh, and the husband have a child.
No, they're co-parenting with one man and married to the next man.